Okay, here we are at 1 o'clock and we're going to get started with today's session. Hopefully everybody had a good lunch or you're just about to dive into a good lunch. And today's session is going to be on how weather station decision support tools can affect you and your farm with our guest, Dan Olmstead. And so this is the fifth and final seminar in our winter seminar series that we've called Getting into the Weeds. And this year's focus was farming in a humid year. So just a bit of a quick Zoom housekeeping before we get into this. Just to let you know that all participants will have their audio and video turned off during the webinar. Also, please make sure that the name displayed on Zoom matches your pesticide license name. This just helps us when we're verifying your attendance later on. Also, if you would like to ask a question, we definitely encourage questions. Please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be monitoring the questions that come in throughout the session. That will be me, Michelle Cortens. I guess I should have introduced myself. I'm the tree fruit specialist at Perennia, and also my colleague Hugh Liu, who's the wild blueberry specialist. So he'll be monitoring the chat and Q&A for us, and we will be addressing questions at the end of the presentation. Also, keep an eye on the chat function. That's where we'll be posting links, for example, the link to get your pesticide points and also a survey to fill out to get your feedback on the session. So just briefly about Perennia. Perennia's vision is that Nova Scotia is a recognized world leader in producing innovative, environmentally responsible and safe food of impeccable quality. And also our mission is to, of course, support the growth, transformation, and economic development in Nova Scotia's agriculture, seafood, and food and beverage sectors. So this seminar series is being brought to you by our Agriculture Services Division. We have a number of different divisions at Perennia, and this Agriculture Division is where we carry out our extension work. So this includes workshops, fact sheets, and a lot of different services that we like to bring to you. So yeah, like I said, this is our final seminar in this series for the winter. So our other service areas are quality and food safety, product development, lab services, and fisheries. And if you have any questions about any of these areas, please feel free to reach out to any one of us at any time, and we can get you more information on these different service areas. So like I mentioned, we do have pesticide points offered for today's session. So we have 1 point being offered, and in order to qualify for those points, we're going to be posting a survey where you have to fill out your name and pesticide number to get that credit for this course. You'll also have to print your screen, and that will be your receipt that you would use to submit when you renew for your certification. Also, for those who collect certified crop advisor points, I do have the QR code listed on the top left of the screen here. So please feel free to take a picture of that now, but I'll also post that at the end of today's session as well. To get credit, I think I might have mentioned already, but you do need to watch on your own device. Just that helps us verify that you're physically attending this session. And if you do have any problems with the pesticide points, please just let us know and we can help you out after the fact. So without further ado, we're getting into the weeds with Dan Olmstead. And I will stop sharing now and leave it to him to bring up his presentation.
Great, thanks a lot. Give me just 1 second and I'll pull up my PowerPoint here. And Michelle, if you can just confirm that you're seeing the screen here, I can get started.
Yes, looks good.
Okay, great. Yeah, so thank you very much for inviting me to talk today. I don't want to load this with a lot of scientific data, but more give you an overview of something that's been going on here in the States that, you know, we often refer to as like a decision support system. And so what I want to talk about today is understanding the benefits of an effective agricultural system like what we are working on within New York State Integrated Pest Management and at Cornell University. So I'm an extension associate, and as I just mentioned, I'm in the Cornell Cooperative Extension System. We're part of the Cornell Land Grant mission here. Every state in the U.S. has a land grant university, and we're charged with serving the public audiences of that state. Let me advance my slide. And what I'd like to do before I get started is just, you know, after talking to Michelle, just give you an idea of what the purpose is of this talk today. And so my understanding is, you know, I want to share and demonstrate the benefits, both environmentally and economically, that can be gained from using and what I'm calling a real-time agricultural risk assessment system when we successfully combine research that comes out of our universities with an education component. So that would be extension, it would be something like this, and to really do it in a way that's meaningful and not just checking off boxes. So before we get started, I'm going to be talking a lot about something called the Network for Environment and Weather Applications. The acronym is NOAA or NEWA. It doesn't really matter how you pronounce it. It's very regional, but it's a lot easier than saying the full name. NOAA is what I just mentioned, a decision support system, and I'll get into what that means in the next few slides. And really, I'll be using NOAA today as a case study to demonstrate the benefits of a DSS and, you know, why it's useful to allocate those resources, not just for yourself, but in a wider network, perhaps, like what Perennia does or what other folks up in your neck of the woods in Nova Scotia and Canadian provinces are doing. The platform itself is actually a website. You're welcome to take a look. I put the URL there. I don't know, Michelle, maybe if you want to drop that in chat, you're more than welcome to look at this as I'm talking. I always try to make this very interactive. But the last point I want to make is that at this time, only for technical reasons, we can't actually deliver these risk assessments I'm going to talk about from Canadian locations. And that has a lot to do with integration of forecast data. I work with the Northeast Regional Climate Center, which is part of a larger network nationally. And we haven't figured out a way to integrate all the types of forecast data, basically. So you'll see my little frowny face there. It's something that I've actually had a lot of conversations about, but it's definitely on our radar. But I think if that happens, it's probably going to be another 2 or 3 years at least, because I think we've got to really build some cross-border momentum. But at any rate, feel free to check it out. We do have a few locations in Maine. I know that's still pretty far, but it'll help you get a better understanding of, you know, our approaches to what we're doing here in the States, at least. So again, NOAA is a website that is part of the New York State Integrated Pest Management Program. We just completed a really big rebuild process. It took 4 years to do. If any of you out there had used the old website, it was first built in 2006. So it was getting very, very old. Our new website just launched this past October. And I've lately been putting in a lot of slides that don't talk directly about the website, but talk about the people behind it, because with all of our devices, with all of the advances in technology, the goal of NOAA is really to extend the efforts of all the real people behind it. And so I just have a collage here, and this isn't even everybody. I've got to update this slide because, you know, I've got to add 7 or 8 more people. But it's really the people who are out there in the different regions we collaborate with that make this possible. So if you were to look at a map of our NOAA stations, you'd see that we have a large geographic coverage area, but it's actually a very decentralized process. And this is part of what makes this decision support platform work, is that we always have local expertise who can work with all of you as growers to provide interpretation and context for what we're what we're putting out from the research and modeling that's on our platform. And again, just to emphasize that a DSS or decision support platform is really a collaborative process. These are just some of the maybe really high up players who contribute either resources or funding to make something like a NOAA platform work. And if we take it one step further, I just mentioned these regional partnerships. So NOAA has its home in New York State, but we have now, I think, 21 other member states. So they pay a small annual fee to subsidize the cost of making, behind the scenes. We've got certain technical things that have to happen. But this truly is a broad collaborative effort. And without this, a decision support system wouldn't work. It's not autonomous, it's not machine learning. It requires maintenance, and it requires folks who can provide different areas of expertise as we go along. And give you a very brief overview visually of where and how people use our platform. This is actually a heat map of NOAA users using web metrics. And again, even this map is out of date. We recently just had University of Maine join our network, along with the state of Delaware, Indiana, Georgia. Again, if you look at a map, you're like, oh my gosh, this is huge. But it's really how we approach the management and logistics of making sure that if a grower has a question, there's a human being there on the other end providing that support. And that really ties in with our extension mission. Now, before I get into some other areas, I wanted to put this slide in pretty early because there's different types of impact and benefits to using a system that takes research, provides an interpretation, and then extends extension efforts. But sometimes, as we all know, it does come down to numbers. Is this, it does require time and labor, and in our system, you do purchase a weather station and there's maintenance involved. But what we did is in 2017, we surveyed all of our users, and we actually had a really good response across our entire network. And so I just have some numbers up here that show what types of impacts, both monetarily and qualitatively, folks see when they use NOAA. So when we talk about spray reductions, and this, I should say this is actually mostly focusing on apple growers, because the vast majority of users up until probably 2020 were in apple production, although that is changing because we have some new initiatives underway. But if we look at cost savings from spray reductions annually, it was, and this is in US dollars, I should say, 4,300. In terms of avoided crop loss on average, about 33,000 US dollars. And I'll add that this is the average acreage was probably like 1 to 200 acres among respondents. So just to put these numbers in context. And then like overall per acre savings, and again, we just asked people to estimate this, about $2,000. And then in general, 75% said they save money one way or another on spray bills. We go to the qualitative side of things. We talk about, does NOAA help you reduce sprays? Overwhelmingly, yes. Improve spray timings. Does it help alert me to a pest risk, either insect or disease that I might not have otherwise realized? Yes, absolutely. And so, again, I'm using NOAA as a case study, but as you folks up in Nova Scotia start to consider something like this, there's a lot of things that are immediately apparent, like in terms of benefits, but as time goes on and you start to use a system like this more and more, there will be unexpected things that come up, and both on an individual basis and as a network, or however folks approach it. And I just have some testimonials up here. When I go to a grower meeting in the winter, everybody says, yeah, NOAA is really great, and I always have to be sure to say that I'm just the person managing the program. It's all of the extension folks out in the field and all of you who have faith in the system and confidence that makes this work, because it would not last long at all if that was not the case. So now I want to get into what exactly makes NOAA work. And I have this fun little picture up here because one of the things I've worked on, and I started in 2017 in this position. I came in as a trained entomologist. I got my master's degree from Cornell as an entomologist. But one of the very first things I saw was that in order to have that confidence in a system like this, it is a website. It can't be one-way communication. It can't be, all right, I go to noaa.cornell.edu and I get an output and have that be it, because that's really a one-way conversation if you think about it. And that to me is not a successful effort, because what happens if I don't quite understand what the output is saying? Or what if I'm trying to use a web page and it's just not working the way I think it should? If I don't have a way to communicate back to the human beings behind this system, I'm going to get really frustrated and I don't want to use it. So we're not a for-profit business. We are nonprofit. We're, like I said, we're part of a land grant mission, but it's become really important for us to dedicate enough resources to create that two-way communication channel. And so I have this up here because we've done a couple of things in this line of in this line of thinking to make sure we're building in that support. So one thing that was launched in 2018 is our NOAA help desk, and there's two elements to this. So the first is that if I'm out in the field and maybe my apple fire blight output is not, it doesn't make sense, or it seems contradictory, what can I do to get some quick answers to that? So, or maybe the website is glitching out or something. I can send an email to support@noaa.zendesk.com, and what this does is it creates an electronic work ticket on our end. So just like any other customer relations management system, we track all the requests that come in, and some of them are like a 1-minute response with a quick answer, and the person's like, oh, awesome, that's great, I can keep doing what I'm doing. If there's something more technical going on, it gives me an opportunity to reach out and maybe follow up with a phone call or a Zoom to say, hey, can you pull this up? Let me see what's happening, so that I can document that and go back to our programmers and say, how can we quickly fix this? So that's one element. The other element that really makes a decision support system like NOAA work is what I call our knowledge base. This is still in the early stages. I just started this last year with the relaunch of our website, but if you go, and I'll show you this later on, if you go to noaa.zendesk.com, we have a series of very short quick start tutorial videos for every single model. And I'll if you're interested, I'll show you how to access those. But it's a nice way to support what our extension folks are also covering in their in-person or webinar efforts. But it also gives the end users, or all you growers out there, the opportunity to go back on your own time, to pause, to say, oh, wait, why isn't this working? Let me go back. And, it just gives you a chance to go through things on your own pace. Now, over time, we're going to be building this out with additional supplemental materials, but as a baseline, those things are available. So to talk a little bit about the website itself, we did a lot of user experience research to redevelop this into what I truly think is a decision support platform. And I say platform because it's not just one tool that we have. I think we probably have 31 or 32 unique tools available for growers and other folks who are interested in our resources available online. And I have up here just a screenshot of a typical user interface. I'll interact with it a little bit in a live demo shortly. But there's certain elements we've built in as standard features that just make it just so much easier to interact with than our old site, if you had used that. The other thing I'll mention on this slide is that this website is mobile friendly. So one of the very first questions I get is, oh, is there a NOAA app? And so the very short answer is no. The reason for that is that anytime Android or iOS pushes an update, you have to have an entire team ready to test everything in your app to make sure nothing is broken. So the compromise we came to is adopting a responsive website design. So if you're on your desktop, you're going to see something like is on the left-hand side of your screen. If you're on the right, if you're on your mobile or tablet, you're going to see something that looks more like what we see on the right-hand side. And I'll expand and shrink my screen to simulate that in just a moment. But that's a pretty big deal. People really like being able to access this in real time out in the field as opposed to having to go to your desktop, because in the past you would have to pinch and squeeze, and it was really, it really killed your eyes. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second, and I'm going to attempt to move to, let's see here. Give me 1 second. Michelle, while I'm doing this, I don't know if there's any questions yet, but we could try and multitask, or we can wait till the end, whatever you prefer.
We are good now. We don't have any questions on the chat or Q&A.
Okay. All right. So let me finish this. And then here, almost there. Share this. Okay. All right. So again, just
looks good.
All right. Yeah, great. Okay. So when you come to our landing page, you're going to see something that looks like this. And like I said, I'm on my laptop right now, so I'm getting the desktop experience. If I were to minimize this, let me see if this is going to work with screen sharing. We'll just do this. I don't think so. So I'm not going to attempt it, but go to NOAA.Cornell, expand, shrink the screen. You're going to see that the different elements are moved around. Everything is still there. On a mobile experience, you just go to the upper left-hand corner. You're going to see a little hamburger menu sometimes, and you can access everything there. So we have this landing page here, and it provides some summary information for anybody who wants to access this. But this really is not the main intent. This is more of like an advertisement saying, hey, we got a lot of interesting stuff on this decision support platform. Come check us out. What I recommend for folks, and this is a new feature, is to create a profile account. So if you click here, I'm not going to do it in the interest of time because I want to show you some other stuff. It brings a pop-up, you sign up for an account, and we just ask for an email. That allows us to save certain settings in each of our models or resources. And this is really a direction we're going to go in with the NOAA decision support platform, because sometimes you need to enter what are called biofix dates. So like with our Apple tools, maybe you need to enter date of first blossom for a carbohydrate thinning model or something like that. Or you're tracking an insect and you need to put in date of first pheromone trap catch. So once you have a profile, we're going to be able to save all of those things for you. So that's a really big advantage of having something centralized like this. Now, before I move on, I do want to come down here and just give you a quick glance at the types of data that we have coming in. So I selected Bangor, Maine, just for this webinar, since it's the closest one we have. But if we zoom out here, you're going to see that we have a whole lot of weather stations in our network. And like I said earlier, it's probably over 800 at this point. But as we continue on, once you sign up for profile, you can select only the weather stations you're interested in. And then anything you do from that point on, it will be a streamlined experience. So you don't have to scroll through all 800s. Again, for this webinar, I'm not going to log in because I want to quickly go through a couple of different things. So I know there's some apple growers on here. And I think what I'll do is I'll just pick perhaps our apple maggot model to demonstrate how this works. So the first time you log in, it's going to default to the current year. So this will say 2022. And because, you know, we're only in March, there's not going to be anything happening over here on the right-hand side. What I've done is I've gone back in time. So this is another great feature of a decision support system like this, where I have selected a weather station. In this case, it's an airport location. But you can also select any other weather station you want. Growers will purchase their own, and then we just go through an onboarding process. And when that's complete, you have a live data feed coming to NOAA, and you can use any of our models. But so we'll just stick with Bangor, Maine for right now. I've selected July 28th as the date of interest. So that's different from over here. So I mentioned before we have a biofix. So in the case of apple maggot, our biofix is first trap catch. So the model's always going to estimate what that is based on degree day accumulations. In this case, it's base 50 Fahrenheit BE. And I know for Canadian folks, we do have some conversions in a tool that I'm going to show you in a second. But you know, if that date is not right, what we do is we say, all right, well, you can pick whatever date you want. So I'm going to change this to July 14th instead, because that's what I actually observed through my IPM scouting. And then you see down here that we have this results table. So this helps us track apple maggot development in real time. So if this was July 28th, 2022, I could see that, all right, well, this is the number of base 50 Fahrenheit BE degree days that have accumulated. So that in itself is interesting. And if you have worked, in apple production for a long time, and you've got a really good idea of when certain thresholds are met for apple maggot, that's great. So you're like, okay, well, maybe I need to do something at 300, which means I'm a couple of days away. But sometimes it's really hard to remember all that information. So another feature of a decision support system, and being able to take advantage of dynamic coding and things like that. In this case, we're using JavaScript, is being able to automatically change parameters. So like when a threshold of 300 degree days is met, the model changes its output. And this is where we get into the human being side of things. So we have apple entomologists at Cornell who have developed recommendations or guidelines for each critical pest stage of apple maggot. So here, right now the model says, based on that July 14th start date, apple maggot is at this pest stage. So adults have emerged and they're laying their first eggs. Okay, that's great, but what do I do now as an orchard manager? So here we have a description of the pest status, like what is happening during this life stage, what can we expect to see out in the orchard, but we also have practical pest management steps that you can take. And to simulate what happens as we go through the season, you can choose a different life stage, and you'll see that these messages change. So as we go through the season, we're always getting real-time guidance and information. Now, like I said, this is not intended to be autonomous. This is intended to supplement the work of our extension colleagues and research folks who have done the background research on this. It's not intended to replace anybody, because one of the big things we always say at New York State Integrated Pest Management is that you need to have a lot of tools in your IPM toolbox. So as neat as NOAA might be, or another decision support system, it shouldn't ever be the only source of information. You should always be verifying with whatever you do for scouting. You can work with your local extension folks. to get really a well-informed and well-rounded outcome in terms of making orchard management decisions. So like I said, we have a lot of models like this. Some of them are similar, but I would say everyone is unique in a different way. So on the NOAA website, if you go up here to crop and IPM tools, I'll just give you a quick overview of the types of categories we have. So like I said earlier, apples and apple production is real, like that absolutely drives growth here in the States. So we have apple scab, fur blight, sooty blotch, and these each have different requirements and parameters and outputs. That's something you can look through on your own. We have 7 different insect pests. And then we also have thinning and irrigation models. So I'm not as plugged into these circles, but so apple carbohydrate thinning and apple irrigation, were developed by Dr. Terrence Robinson here. I know he's pretty well known nationally and internationally. But again, we've worked with him to take the research he has done on fruitlet thinning to come up with a way of tracking carbohydrate balance. So either surplus or deficit to help us say, all right, well, if my tree is already in a deficit, there's probably less of a need to apply a chemical thinner to achieve that ideal crop load at the end of the season. Another model, which is newer that we just added in 2019, is called the pollen tube growth model. This is another thinning approach that targets the blossoms instead of the fruitlets. So that's a really interesting one to look at as well. And that relies on research that was done by Dr. Gregory Peck. We do have some NOAA berry tools. We have a blueberry maggot model. Folks in Maine are actually interested in this. And I think that's one of the reasons why they joined, along with a few other things that we have available. And we do have a strawberry diseases model. If anybody's interested in grape production, we have some stuff there. If you follow news out of the US, spotted lanternfly is becoming a very, very big deal. It's been confirmed as far west as Indiana at this point, I think. But it's also moving up into the Hudson Valley region of New York State. So we've developed some new tools there for vineyard producers to predict when those life stages will be coming out. A couple of field crop tools and a couple of vegetable tools. I won't really go into detail there. The potato diseases model, I'm calling this a legacy resource because we weren't able to secure funding to transition this to the NOAA 3.0 website, but it still works perfectly well. It doesn't get a lot of traffic, but I want to point that out because I know that may be one of your areas of interest up in Nova Scotia. So that just gives you an idea of what a DSS like NOAA can provide. And one of the other things we're really trying to do moving forward is to be flexible and be sure that if new research comes out or new information for any of our models, that we can be responsive, maybe in 3 to 6 months, have an update available so that what we're putting out there reflects what the best research and extension approaches are suggesting. All right, so looks like we're pretty decent on time. I think what I'd like to do next is show some more universal tools. So I've been talking about risk assessment tools up until this point, but honestly, some of the most popular tools we have that can be offered and be useful through a decision support system is even basic weather data. So everybody has a different use for weather data. Different people like to track it at different scales and time series and stuff like that. But what we do here is we offer up a couple of different options through this tool called an all-weather data query tool. So if you remember the 800 plus weather stations, we can give you hourly and daily data summaries for any of those locations for up to a 365-day period of time. So let's say that I'm interested in what was going on at this airport location in Bangor from June of 2021, we'll say June 1st through, we'll just say maybe July 31st. So you put it in there and immediately you see something's happening on the right-hand side. This is a really neat new feature. Everything is automated. There is no submit button. There is no click here to take the next steps. This is a very dynamic website, which really facilitates what we're trying to do with this DSS. So what you have here is a daily summary for that time period I just selected. If you want hourly data, you'd simply toggle that on. You have the same thing here. You can download all of these data to a CSV file and then do whatever you want. Something really interesting that has been happening the past 3 or 4 years. So, you know, we talk a lot about climate change and climate mitigation. We've had some pretty extreme weather events here in New York State. And so I'm discovering that a lot of people are using this for crop insurance purposes even. So now we're moving, you know, when we talk about a decision support system, we're moving from like biological disease and insect assessments to abiotic factors. And all right, maybe like what was the precipitation pattern for the last 3 years for this period of time from June to July, and you can start to use that to inform your farm management decisions. And so the other thing was crop insurance. And, you know, if there's an extreme weather event, having a weather station on your farm as opposed to, and I don't know how it works in Canada, I will qualify that, but here in the US, you have to provide documentation from the nearest possible weather data source. And so this becomes very, very convenient. And I've probably had 8 to 10 growers just in the past year take advantage of this for reporting purposes. So this is one type of, you know, we call them our weather tools. So this is more abiotic, but it is part of a decision-making process. The other one I want to mention is this degree day calculator. So with NOAA at this point, it's pretty easy for us to add new resources, including different types of degree day models. But, you know, if there's ever something that isn't standard and you really have an urgent need for information, let me just select, we'll just do April 1st to maybe June 30th. Here, we have what we're calling our degree day calculator. And if we scroll down here on the left-hand side, that right now this is calculating a base 40 Fahrenheit model. But more and more we are looking for Celsius conversions and things like that as we begin to expand the folks we are working with. It is something on my mind that we need to be flexible to provide both types of output here. But we have base 40 Fahrenheit, but if you want something else, we'll just say base 4 Celsius. All you do is choose that and it updates automatically. You probably almost didn't even see that because it was so fast. But maybe let's select base 39 Fahrenheit. You see everything updates automatically. So again, you can download these data for your own records or whatever you want to do. So let me see here. I think that's all I want to show you for now on the NOAA website itself. But what I do want to visit before I stop talking and you can open it up for discussion is this idea of our support desk. And honestly, if we hadn't launched this in 2018, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now because, you know, it might seem obvious, but, you know, with this growth, if you try and sort everything through direct emails without any higher level organization, it quickly becomes untenable. So this has really become part of the backbone of what makes our decision support system successful, is both this self-service portal that I'm showing you now, but also that two-way conversation that you can have by contacting the help desk. So very quickly, for example, if we go into our Apple resources, you can see this is what I was talking about earlier, where we're compiling a baseline of self-service resources. So down here, if we go to the Apple Mega model, I managed to create this in under 5 minutes, so it doesn't take a long time. We have closed captioning available on all of our resources. If that's helpful, you can stop, you can open it up full screen. And then we also list links to some other resources within the help desk to help you quickly get started. If we go here, we do have some tutorials for getting started quickly with that profile I mentioned. So you can click there. These are on every single resource page, so they're really easy to find. And actually, real quick, I did forget to mention one thing here, is that if you go in the upper left-hand corner of any of our models, you can get to those same pages by clicking that watch tutorial. And I'll do it again. So right up here in the upper left-hand corner, this is the fastest way for a specific model to get to our help desk. So there's the email that you can send, but you can also submit a web form right there. It's pretty straightforward, and you just hit submit. So with that, you know, we're at 40 minutes, and I'd really like to leave time for questions and conversation, if that's okay with the hosts.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Dan. I'm envious. I'm very envious. It's a great system. Hugh, do we have any questions that came in?
We do have a first question, and I can address it. I don't know if you want me to open my video, or do you want me to open my video there? Okay, I couldn't do it. Can you just turn on my video for me, please? There.
Just
Awesome.
Yep, there you are.
Okay, thank you so much, Dan. And we have a first question about the degree day calculation methods. You guys used to use the max and minimum approach for the calculation, but now you switch to a sine wave algorithm methods. So can you comment on the accuracy of both methods?
Yeah, so that's a really good observation. So we do still have simple average degree day approaches for some of our insects, but you also saw that in the degree day calculator. The sine wave refers to BE, so that's short for Baskerville-Eman. That particular model, that approach is really useful on days where I'll use, you know, maybe 10, I'll say 10 Celsius is our threshold. Okay, so if we have a base 10 Celsius model and you know, a majority of the day is just below, like if you look at hourly values, and a majority of the day is below 10 Celsius, but you have a portion of the day that's above, it's almost like you get partial credit for that little bit of time that was above the threshold. So that's what BE refers to. BE is definitely more accurate. And so, you know, if you have that option, like that's usually what I suggest, is to go with BE in the calculator. But the other half of that is that, you know, so say you're looking at a particular insect and you know that some research has been published, you definitely need to stick with what's been published in the research. I don't think it's a safe assumption to just, okay, so if the paper said 10 Celsius, but I have the option to do 10 Celsius BE, I would still do 10 Celsius because the research hasn't validated anything for the BE approach. If that gets a little bit confusing, but if that makes sense.
Okay, great, thank you. And just follow up on the BE degree day calculation methods. Can you recommend a good BE degree day calendar?
BE calendar?
Yeah, BE degree day calendar for the.
I don't have a good answer right now. I can follow up.
Sorry, a calculator. He just correct the question.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So right now we have that drop-down list. If there was something on there that somebody wants, but it's not listed, that's something we can add like really, really fast. I don't know of any online calculators, but I bet they're out there. So again, I guess I don't have a good answer for that, but I could follow up afterwards if you want to send contact information, or I can I can work through the both of you to get that information to the grower.
Okay, sounds good. I know the person who asked the question, and if he needs, I can connect both of you.
Okay.
There. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah. So the next question: how important is the data cleaning function for accuracy? Are the models super sensitive if a day or two is missing for some reason?
That's an awesome question. So this is another advantage of having a centralized decision support system, because we do have quality control measures in place. Up until October of last year, when we relaunched, our approach to missing data would be to have, okay, so I'm a grower, I'm adding a physical weather station. My colleagues at the Northeast Regional Climate Center, who are meteorologists, would pair that with a sister station, so that if data went out at the first location, data would be substituted in, because we can't have gaps in the data, especially for our degree day modeling, because otherwise insect development is going to be actually more advanced than it would be showing if data were missing. So that is one step, but we also have a bunch of other things in place behind the scenes. And one of the new features is that instead of a sister station, we now use gridded data within the continental US. So NRCC, the Northeast Regional Climate Center, can get temperature data at a resolution of 2.5 kilometers for the entire United States. And so at least for basic parameters, temperature, precipitation, relative humidity, we can directly substitute those in if something goes wrong.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and the next one is about question about financial support. So you have a page showing you have a lot of partners from different places. Okay, do you have a rough figure of the level of financial support from those partners?
Yeah, so it actually hasn't changed in the past 10 years. We asked for, and this is US dollars, $1,750. And the way NOAA is set up, that literally just covers our cost of extending like the technology to cover another state. So like, and what that does is anybody in that US state can then add their station without having to pay anything else beyond, the equipment costs. As we keep growing, like we want to make sure, well, not we, I want to make sure this is equitable moving forward. And so, that might be a conversation we have in the future about, well, who's paying for what. And, but our goal is simply to, zero out our budget. It actually doesn't always work, but, our goal is, if we can reasonably support our extension colleagues in other regions and states, we want to do it. We just need to make sure those operational costs are covered as best as we can.
Perfect. And the next question is about the weather station. So what source of weather station do you use for your data, like private, government, or industry growers?
Yeah, it's a mix. So in terms of privately owned weather stations, we only work with 2 vendors, and that's for logistical reasons and again for data quality control. The first vendor is Onset, and they have a standard configuration that includes all the sensors that NOAA models need. Our other vendor, they are formerly known as Rainwise. They are now KestrelMet. But Rainwise was on where you can get all of the sensors available. So yeah, those are the 2 vendors here in the US that we're able to work with at this point. Now that we have airport locations, so those data are obtained through a system called ICAO, and that's part of like NOAA, and I can't remember exactly where from, but it's like National Weather Service here in the US.
Okay, I don't see more question in the chat, but question for myself. So do you guys have all kinds of sensors for each weather station, or you guys decided like maybe in this location for this kind of crop, you only need like leaf weather needs?
Yeah, well, we have these standard configurations, and honestly, like a vast majority of our users are apple producers. So Like the most critical one is solar radiation, because without solar radiation, we can't calculate carbohydrate balances for thinning and stuff like that. But pretty much across the board, we recommend like all the sensors, because then it would become logistically a nightmare. In the next couple of years, I'm actually working on some new efforts where, you know, maybe we have like a remote sensor or something like that that just takes 2 or 3 parameters, but we don't have an infrastructure for that yet. So there's going to be a lot of R&D in that area.
And how often the weather stations are uploading data to your network?
So there's 2 different steps there. So the stations typically upload to the vendor. So this is the first step. So data need to go from the weather station to the vendor platform. So for Onset, it's HoboLink. For Kestrelmet, it's well, what is it now? It's kestrelmet.net. That's how data are initially transferred, and that can be like anywhere from every 5 minutes to once an hour. What we do on our side of things is we have web services connected to each vendor, and we do hourly data queries for that, and then everything is summarized to hourly in our system. So when you look at the hourly records, you're actually looking at a summary of however many, you know, if it was every 5 minutes, you're getting like the maximum temperature, an average of the temperatures that were taken in that single hour.
Great, perfect, thank you. Yeah, don't see any more questions. So anybody, if
I have a few questions here. So going back to somebody's question about the finances for this system, the partners contribute a bit, but there's also different sources of funding as well. Is that right?
So you mean in terms of membership or?
Well, so I guess you would look for funding if you were adding a new model. Is that right? But
Yeah.
then how about the maintenance piece? Like, is the maintenance being covered fully by the partners, or is your wage being covered by something else? Like, what are the different funding sources?
So that's a really good question. So the funds that are collected my salary does not come out of that. So I'm paid through New York State government. Like that's part of our mission. So any funds that are collected from our partners cover like help desk support or subscription fees, or you're right. So like minor maintenance of the models that are existing. Somebody wants to add a new model. Typically how that happens is I'm approached by like a researcher or an extension specialist who can provide like the technical expertise on the biological side of things. And then I kind of put on my project management hat and I come up with a cost estimate and a timeline and things like that. And then we go from there. So there's not a standard cost. Like it's not like, hey, just give me 5,000 US and I'll build it. It really depends on the complexity and what we want to do to get a good outcome.
Yeah. All right, we have another question about the sensors. So how about drought measuring instruments such as soil moisture probe or ET gauge?
So yeah, that's really interesting as well. So some of our stations that we do have those parameters being collected, but we've never done anything with them until very, very recently. The first model that's going to be coming out, and it's going to be limited to New York State, is a seed corn maggot model, because we're facing a neonicotinoid ban in New York State. It failed last year, but there's a really high likelihood that it's going to go through in the next year or two. So we want to get ahead of it. But we have to be able to measure soil temperature to track those degree days. So moving forward, is that sort of model, you know, maybe it's something else, or, you know, maybe it is a drought tool, gains traction, you know, we'll probably move in a direction of recommending soil parameters as well, like as a standard feature. I should say our partner, the Northeast Regional Climate Center, does do some drought predictions, but they use gridded data more than physical weather stations. So.
Perfect. And another question about the technical knowledge in-house to run this, or do you need to hire somebody look after that?
Yeah, so in the past, again, so Northeast Regional Climate Center, they do meteorology and climate and stuff like that, but they have programmers on staff. So the NOAA 3.0 website, we developed closely with them. Moving forward, I think we're going to adopt a hybrid model because I want to have some resources internal to our program to kind of speed things up a little bit. But if you're asking the question of, do we hire a company to do it? The answer is no, because it becomes cost prohibitive. And it's hard for us. Like, so if we had gone with a private company, it probably would have cost about $500,000 to redevelop this site. And if you think about the labor and time involved and you account for everything internally, it probably came out to something close, but it just coming up with a lump sum like that it was unrealistic for us. No one's going to fund that through a grant to just build a website. So.
Yeah, perfect. That's pretty much everything from the Q&A and chats, Michelle. Do you want to mention something important?
Great. Yeah, I just have a slide I'm going to pull up here. There we go. So I just want to say thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And thank you very much, in particular to Dan for joining us today. Really enjoyed the discussion after your presentation as well. Yeah, I think you've brought up a lot of really good points and questions that we want to consider. So really appreciate your time doing that. I also want to let all of our guests know that the pesticide points survey was posted in the chat. So make sure you get the link for that in order to qualify for points and fill out that survey. I also just posted a link to the survey for this session so that we can get your feedback on anything you liked or anything you suggest we change in the future. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. That's my email address there. And again, on the top left of this screen, I've got the Certified Crop Advisor QR code there that you can scan if you collect those points. So round of applause. Thank you very much, Dan, for joining us. And good luck with all of your efforts with NOAA in the future.
Great. Reach out anytime if you have questions.
Thanks, Dan.
All right.
Okay, I'll just leave this running for a minute or two here to give people a chance to grab those survey links and to scan the QR code there.